So, good evening everyone and welcome to the next video of this series. In this video we want to take a brief look at the infrastructure that can help us to host our training, and for that reason, in reflection to the previous video, what we're going to cover here is the first part of the first phase, which basically considers which infrastructure to use and how to instantiate it for a particular training. So for that reason, we are going through 3 steps. So the first one is I would like to share a bad case scenario with you, something that really happened to me in a training where I was a participant. Then on this basis, I would like to discuss briefly some requirements that we have for such an infrastructure, or to be honest, one main requirement. And in the last part, we want to discuss some different options and fundamental decisions you have to make in terms of the infrastructure without going into too much detail. So as you probably can guess, in this setup, we cannot discuss all the possible infrastructures at a glance. So we rather discuss some fundamental aspects. Okay, but first let's start with the bad case scenario, something that we probably do not want to experience during training. So in that particular training, everything started in advance with an email where I received the invitation for this mail as a calendar appointment. To be honest, it already was the second mail because in advance I already received a block for this appointment. So far so good. Then soon after, I think 2 days later or something like that, I received another mail, and this mail now was sent by the trainer himself, and it was delivering the invitation link for some web call tool. Doesn't matter which one it was. In addition, a few minutes later, I also received an SMS, a password, which was delivered by a short message service on my phone. So to get into the call, later I will need the password as SMS and I will need the invitation link. No problem so far. Then story moves on. I received another mail. This time the training notes were delivered to give me the chance to prepare for the training and to briefly take a look what will happen, which is basically a cool and nice thing. Yeah, and you guess it, story goes on. One more mail was delivered a few days later with the request to answer some questions in some online survey tool, which is asking some questions to the participants basically is a good idea, but I already was a little bit annoyed from all the mails that came for just a 1-day training. Yeah, and finally, one more mail with the updated training material because obviously something has changed. So my mailbox already was pretty much filled with mails just in respect for this one training. And yeah, you guess if you get many mails a day and so many mails for just one training, then probably this does not contribute to a very positive feeling on the participant side. Yeah, then training day started. I entered the call in advance, but it only was opened at 9 o'clock in the morning. And just at that moment, I discovered that the web tool didn't work for some reasons. I don't know. I had to download the client first, which I couldn't figure out earlier because I've never used this tool. So made me some strange feelings here. And I finally managed to get everything working 20 minutes past 9, but without the camera. And obviously, I wasn't the only one who was struggling because I have seen many other participants without camera as well, which probably is an uncomfortable feeling for the trainer, I can guess. So this was the story until we get the training and the audio and video call running, more or less. Yeah, and then during the training, some exercises were or had to be done, which is a good thing. But for these exercises, 3 different tools were used. And for all these exercises, the links and also the links for all the exercise groups were shared in the chat. And so it was confusing again, which is the right one and how is this tool working. And I really have to admit that the trainer at this time, he really did his best to explain all the tools. But From a trainer perspective, I guess we lost a lot of time for these elements that we could have used in a better way, at least I guess. So as you can imagine, this is exactly the situation that we don't want to have. So what should we try to achieve instead of that? Well, there is only one simple answer. We should try to find a solution which provides towards the participants a single point of entry. This means there is only one point, one entry point where the participants can find all the fancy things that you want to create. All the training material, communication channels, exercises, and stuff like that. So basically what we want to find in one place is at least the communication channel, which covers audio and video, a chat, maybe the breakout rooms. We want to find all the relevant training meta information, like the information on who is the trainer, what is the training about, maybe an executive summary, a syllabus, whatever is relevant for the training. And for the procedure of the training, of course, all the relevant content, like the show notes, like the exercises, like examples and stuff like that. We also would like to see everything on the one single point of entry. So that's basically the goal, and some pretty nice infrastructure tools are out there which can help us with that. But of course, they also require to have some familiarization. So whenever we decide on one particular infrastructure, of course, we also should complement this with the task for of introduction. So this means we should at least give the participants the chance to familiarize with the infrastructure. So to prepare a situation where the training starts and everyone really can find into the infrastructure and everyone already knows how the technical stuff works out, so that we really can concentrate on the delivery or the together elaboration of the content, because this is what the training is about, the content and not the focus on the infrastructure. How to make this one in detail, we will cover in the next or the second next video. I have to look up. But anyway, we will cover this. Okay, but before we talk about the participants introduction, let's take a closer look on the options that we have to prepare such an infrastructure. Well, basically the first thing here is that we have to make one fundamental decision between two options. One of these options is to rely on an integrated environment, something like Microsoft 365, or to rather involve some self-hosted concept, which could be built upon different modules that maybe are hosted by ourselves, like, for example, Moodle or any other thing that you can remember. So basically any content management system could do the job for you here. So let's compare these two options and figure out what we can about the benefits and the drawbacks. So first of all, if we think about the integrated environment, there is clearly one benefit, which means it's an integrated environment. Integrated environment in that case means that you have the option to integrate different elements that can be useful for your training inside one particular environment. So typically all these things work seamless together and you don't have to care about too many things. That's the clear benefit. The second benefit that came up during the pandemic is that the digital competence of people made a dramatic improvement, and many of them are using MS365 today. So you have pretty high chances that people are already familiar with that infrastructure, they already have it running, and so there is no need for a major learning step here. That's the benefits. But of course, Microsoft 365 and similar environments, they are software as a service. So on the one hand, you have to pay for the service that you consume. So there is the aspect of cost that needs to be considered. And some other aspect that maybe is more relevant to maybe yourselves or customers from you, which is the topic of privacy. So whenever you're consuming some software as a service, typically data is processed on some servers that are not under your control. So you always have to figure out the question of privacy. And in that particular context, I think this is an open question, and everyone needs to figure out for himself what's the best option here for you. If you can deal with that, if that's acceptable for you, or if this is an absolute no-go or showstopper. I think that's an individual decision that we cannot solve right here. The alternative to such integrated environments is that you have some individual infrastructure, as we mentioned earlier. And here we have one clear benefit, which is the possibility for individual customization and administration. So if you want to, you can rely on open source software. You can host everything by yourself. So you have pretty all possibilities that you want to have. That's definitely a benefit because you have more options. On the other hand, there is a drawback, which again is customization and administration, which means you have to do it. So you have to figure out for yourself, are you capable, are you willing to set up and run and operate and especially maintain such a self-built environment. And of course, if you create the environment of individual modules, probably your participants are not familiar with that, and you have to care about some initial learning for them. In the end, the topic of infrastructure has, I don't know, there are too many options, and this is nothing that we can finalize or discuss until the end right here. It was just important for me to raise these topics to help you make yourselves a mind on what could be the best choice for you. But aside of the technology, of course, from the trainer perspective, we always should strive for a solution that enables us to provide a single point of entry towards the participants to avoid confusion. Yeah, and to give you some idea how this could look like, I would like to share a very brief example with you of such an environment which I set up for a requirements engineering training, which is a training that I give on a frequent basis. And so let me switch to my second monitor right here. Okay. And so what you basically see right now is my Microsoft Teams environment. So you see some different teams on the left side. I have hidden all the teams of with real customers. So here is one team which I just called Open Trainings. So this is where I typically host all my open trainings. And if we open this team, then we can see that there is one channel from a training I delivered in January this year. It's called Requirements Engineering. And if we click on it, we're already here. So we see a very familiar setup here with the posts that we can make, maybe some files that we can share. And if you realize, here is a new tab, which is called Show Notes. So just in case some people don't know about this possibility, you are not restricted to only posts and files right here. By hitting the plus sign, you can integrate some individual tabs, which could be a mural, a OneNote page. It could also be a website. So for example, if you host your environment or the training material in a Moodle system or some other content management system, you could integrate it here as a website. Or if you prefer to stick with the integrated concepts, then you could use a SharePoint page as the single point of entry for all the provided training material and exercises. In my case, I choose the SharePoint option. So if I click the Show Notes tab, then I'm directed to a SharePoint page. And this SharePoint page that opens here is basically the single point of entry where the participants can find everything related to the training. So if we take a look at this page, then we can see it's organized in a hierarchical way from top to the bottom. So on the very top section here, we have some generic information like some basic information of the training, what everything is about. We have the contact to the trainer. We have some links to the training materials. So if I just click on, for example, this page here, then the PDF file opens with all the necessary information for the training. Just can go back here. I'm again at my starting page. Same thing would work for page number 2. And of course, you also can right click. You can open it and then say save file, so you can download the PDF file as well. Yeah, here on the right side, we see a link to some participants introduction. I do not open it right now because we will discuss this in the next video in more detail. And yeah, basically that's the generic information on the training. And then if we scroll down, then we see separation of the different parts of the training, like part 1 introduction, part 2 system context analysis, stakeholder analysis, and everything down until the second day. So it's 7 parts plus, no, it's 8 parts plus a closing session. And here in this page, basically for every block, you can find the entry point to the different group exercises. So for example, if we take, I don't know, let's take the stakeholder analysis, then you see here a link to a workspace for exercise group A or exercise group 1 and exercise group number 2. So the participants now, whenever we come to the point where the exercise is executed, then they can open this exercise link just by clicking, and then they are directed to a mural where they access as anonymous visitor. I'm the koala right now. You already know how Mural works. And here all the exercise environment can be found. So from the participants' perspective, they just open Teams. They stick in the channel for communication. So this is where we have the call, where we have the breakout sessions. And here in the show notes section, this is the place where they can find all the information in respect to the training. My experience tells me that this was a major step during the trainings because it provides a good structure and a good organization. And I have to admit that this one looks very complicated, and maybe you ask now, wow, should I do this for every training? And I can tell you, creating such a page is less effort than you probably might think here in the beginning. And to be honest, in the trainings that we do on a frequent basis, the creation of such a SharePoint page is really that simple that we also work together with a contractor, which is a very fantastic company. So thanks a lot at this moment to Yasmin and her team from OTC, because these contractors, they already provide everything for us. So our trainers, basically, they set up the SharePoint page for a training. They use it as a template. And whenever this training is hosted for a new group, then our contractor is able to just instantiate this page. They just create a new channel with the new date, with the new appointment. They invite the participants, and they already create the murals, and they instantiate the SharePoint page. So the trainers don't need to care about these things by themselves. So that's really a kind of, yeah, that's a working level that I appreciate very much. So to summarize that point here, I think providing the participants with an entry point that is as simple as possible is a major step to have a smooth start in the training and to have a smooth start in every exercise. This looks maybe overwhelming for you now, but in the next video, I want to guide you just as an example through the creation of a SharePoint page, just to give you the idea of how you can make it by yourselves. And I hope you will see that it's not a big deal and that you definitely can do it on your own as well. So see you in the next video, and then let's discuss how to create such a single point of entry. So see you there.